Okay, YouTubers, this is Joe from ArtAlienTV. Now today we're looking at 2 gigapans and the mystery mounds in Gale Crater, or at least a couple of them, 2 or 3 of them. Now some of these are huge, and I don't think these are entirely natural mounds. And they're surrounded by and covered in artifacts, which leads me to believe that a lot of these mounds, like we have here, there's also some over here, are burial mounds, or at least were used as burial mounds. Now, you could argue whether that's artificial or not. As soon as you start modifying a mound, or a small hill, or whatever you want to call it, or a small mountain, or rocky outcrop, if you modify it, if you tunnel into it, then it's no longer a natural structure. It then becomes something other than a natural structure. And we have many examples of these on Earth, all over the world. So, what was interesting about this is, now, what I've done, I've got this one here. This is about a video I did called Mars Man Walking. Now, this video I did initially back in 2015 and went viral, and it's had over 250,000 views. It's called Mars Man Walking, Buddhist monk, and this appears to be someone walking on the surface of Mars. Now, I'm not saying it is someone walking, because I don't think this is actually a person. I think this is probably a statue or something similar to that. Now, what's weird about this is that it really does look like someone walking, and you can see some interesting details on it, but it's a long way off. I'm just going to give you an idea of how far away this thing is, and we could try and work out how tall this potential person or statue figure is. And it's right back here. So this is Sol 590, and the mound in question is right at the back here on the right, not the far right, but sort of middle right. And you go right up to here, zoom in, and there he is. Now, he looks very, very small. Why? Because he's a long way off. And I only think this person or statue, or whatever it is no more than about 3 or 4 feet high, but I could be wrong. In fact, it says here in the blurb, if you read what it says under the video. Now, you can link to this video via this Gigapan. If you follow these links down below, it will show you a close-up down here of the Mars Man walking, the monk. Just down here somewhere, here he is. Now, I've done a new clip of this, and I was a lot more careful this time not to degrade the image in any way. Now, when I originally did the video, sorry, let's zoom out a bit, there we are. When I originally did the video, I got in a bit too close. I'm just going to play a bit of it now and show what happens when you get too close to these images. Now, the point is, there aren't a huge number of pixels covering this area. And as you can see here, when you zoom in, it pixelates. Now, I've learned since then to actually enlarge the images a lot more and blur them a bit. Like I've done in this part here, I blurred it to get rid of the pixelation. So that's a tip for anybody out there who's trying to work with these images. They're quite low res, and what you need to do is really enlarge the image and blur it just a little bit, just enough to get rid of the grainy sort of pixelation. You can see the pixelation still around the edges here, but because I blurred it, it's actually better. It's actually counterintuitive, because what most people do is sharpen the images. Now, sharpening the images doesn't make them better, and all it does is make them break up, in fact. But you can see here what looks like someone walking in this direction, up this hill, up this slope, with a white head and an arm here, a knee sticking up, and the other leg down here, like this, wearing a sort of gown or something. Now, I'll just play this video through. This is a real short video. This was only like just under 2 minutes long. Now, this is where it goes in too close, as you will see, and you can see that it starts to blur out a lot. But what I did do is compare it to some images of monks and stuff here coming up, wearing a gown like one of these, like a religious monk would wear. Now, I don't know if it is wearing a gown, it's just that sort of posture of someone wearing a large gown like this here. I just thought that was a good comparison. I'm not saying it is someone wearing a gown. I think it's more likely to be this thing, a bit of an optical illusion. And what I think is going on And you can see this is very pixelated here. What I think is going on is this white object is actually behind this dark object here, which is the body and the arm. I think that may be something behind on that little ridge. But it's very, very hard to tell when you have a pixelated low-res image like this. So what I've tried to do with this Gigapan here is to show this in a better light. And I was a lot more careful with the enhancement here, and I've gone in really, really carefully and haven't overdone it. And you can see the raw image here. This is small. I would say, I mean, how far away would you think this is? I would say this is a long way off. So the actual viewing angle or viewing position is somewhere about here, looking across at the features in Gale Crater. And we've got these mounds, another mound here and this one here. So this is a long way off. I would say this is hundreds, probably 200, 300, 400 yards away. It's really hard to say. I would say that this here, let's go back down here, this here is about 50 feet. This would be about 100, 150, 200. I would say somewhere around the 200 to 300 feet away. So you're talking 100 yards at least. 100 meters, 100 yards-ish. So it's quite a long way off, and he looks really small. So I would say that this person or statue, whatever it is, figure, is about 3 or 4 feet high. It could be a little bit taller, okay? I could be wrong, it could be smaller. It's very, very hard to work out because there isn't really a very good point of reference here. And there's loads of other things to see here as well. I'm just going to show you them briefly, but I'm not going to go through them in great detail because I want to show you something else as well in a minute. There is this thing here, which I've shown before. A lot of you may have seen this. It looks a bit like a fence post. I'm not saying it is a fence post. I'm saying it's not a rock, and it's very unlikely to be a rock. And it is shaped a bit like this electric fence post here, which is curved round, and the wire goes through there. So who knows what that is? It could be a ventifact, but I'm sort of gambling on it being actually a kind of metal rod that was probably reinforcing some kind of structure here, and the structure has collapsed, and we still have the metal part sticking up. I have shown many examples of this in other areas near here. In Gale Crater, where you have concrete blocks, and often they have metal bars going through them, reinforced metal concrete basically, and the concrete kind of cracks and breaks away, leaving the framework sometimes sticking up or out. And you often see these sticking out of rocks as well. So I do believe that the civilization in this area definitely had concrete technology. They weren't just building from solid stone. I think like the Romans and some of our ancient cultures, they were using concrete many thousands of years ago, and probably started using it after they were building with solid blocks and mud brick and that kind of thing. And moved on to concrete later on, like we did thousands of years ago. So there was that. There's this thing here, which is very strange. It looks a bit like a bear or some kind of creature, just a head lying there. Now, whether this is from a statue or a specimen, I couldn't tell you. Not enough detail. You can just about make out it's got a pointed snout with a little nose on the end, a mouth here, an eye here. And even in the raw image, you can see the eye just there. If you let your eye adjust, hang on. My mouse is freaking out here. Let's go back a bit. You can see an eye just there. If you stare at it just for a few seconds, there it is. Okay. So these things are there. I'm not putting them there. They're very strange. I don't always know what to make of them all the time. I try and make sense of these things, but sometimes it's very difficult because you're dealing with an alien culture, and they probably had some strange rituals, and there do seem to be an awful lot of heads lying around, and I do think this is some kind of ritual kind of thing that they had, either to pay respect to the creature or the dead person by leaving their head somewhere, or as a warning sign of some sort, or some kind of religious ritual or thing. I don't know for sure, but it's something very strange going on here, and I do think they had some kind of cult or religious thing where they would just put heads everywhere, like some tribes do, you know, on Earth. Some primitive headhunting tribes would leave heads on sticks or in certain areas to warn other tribes off and that kind of thing. They'd often keep them as trophies. And we still have a bit of that culture in our hunting culture today, where people keep animal heads on the wall and display them as a victory over that creature and showing their prowess as a hunter, that kind of thing. So who knows what's going on there for sure. But for one thing is for sure, there's an awful lot of these heads around, and many are animals, but there's many humanoid and other types of heads as well, like this one here. This is one of my favourite finds actually, and I forgot all about this one. If you look at the detail, that's going a bit close, you can actually see, like many of the other humanoids that I found, he has upturned nostrils. Now, many of the specimens I found, the skulls, the ones without the flesh on, you can actually see that the nasal cavity is upside down on these. Okay, not like a human one. The human one is a sort of triangular shape coming down like this. Theirs go up the other way. They're reversed. So they're not human as such, but they're sort of quasi-human, I would say. Humanoid. They're not dissimilar to us. And this one's pretty cool because you can see, not a lot of detail, but you can see an ear there. There's an ear. And the nose detail is quite fine and small. But we got an upturned nostril just there. So that was interesting. But that was quite a spooky one. We also have this sarcophagi here, or what do you call it? A coffin, really, a stone coffin. Now, not only does it have what looks like glyphs, golden glyphs on the side, and a lid here, but also what looks like a little carved figurine on the end, like a cherubim, like you would see on the Ark of the Covenant or something like that. Very interesting. Just here, you can see the head, nose, eye there. It's very faint. I've had to brighten this quite a lot just to bring that out. It's in shadow, so you can't see it very well. But there's a figure on the end, okay? Very interesting. Then there's what looks like a shipwreck. Now I've got a clip of the video thumbnail here from that video. Let's go in a bit closer. Now this was done years ago as well. And I've taken another clip here from further up in the Gigapan and enhanced the whole area for you so you can see where the shipwreck is. And let's go in. I'm trying to go in a bit carefully here because this thing tends to zoom in and out very quickly. And there it is. The actual superstructure of the ship is broken off, but there's still some here. And I was very careful with this enhancement not to destroy the detail, and I very carefully lightened it and added a bit of contrast and colour corrected it. And you can see there's still superstructure on top of this thing. You can see parts sticking up here. It's not very clear. This is a long way off. It's probably about a mile or two away, but it's very big. This is huge. I'll show you where it is on here actually. It's right at the top here. So you go right up here. Now this end of the Gigapan is very light. This is what happens with Gigapans. You get one end very light and one end quite dark. So you can see it here, just here. And that's the bow, the front end of the ship there. And it's all kind of covered in sand, and sand has drifted over the whole thing at the back here. But the front end is fairly clear, and you can actually see, if you squint a bit and zoom in, you might want to zoom in using your browser like this, just to get in a bit closer. You can see those structures on top, sticking up. Metal or complex structures sticking out on top of this thing, with a kind of rectangular part to it here and there. It's not very clear. And there's another part of the superstructure here. This would be the con tower or the main part of the citadel structure on top of a ship, probably. But it's all broken off here. So let's go back down here and have another quick look at that. And I'm going to show you something else near here as well. So there it is. You can see those structures here. And the front of the ship there. If we go in a bit closer, I'm trying not to go in too quickly. This thing tends to jerk around quite a lot on this Giga Macro site. You can see the front structure there of the ship. And there's even a circular dark part here, which may be where the or here, there's another one there, where the anchor came out. Generally on a ship, you have these big holes on the side for the anchor to drop down from. And they have a sort of big winch on the top and then on a chain, and then it drops down. Who knows? But there's some interesting detail there. It's pretty vague, some of it, but you could take clips yourself actually and darken it much more, and you'll probably see more. I was very careful not to go too dark with this, because I wanted to maintain the other details in the area. So it's still a bit of a mystery, this one, but I suspect it's probably a statue, as I've shown many before, and unusually it's still upright, which means there must be something attached to it going down into the ground, otherwise this would have fallen over. The centre of gravity is probably up here somewhere. It's larger on top than it is down here, and I think it should have fallen over this way by now. So it's either attached to something in the ground that's holding it up, or it is actually a person walking. Now I think the latter is unlikely, but who knows? So that was interesting, and the cool thing is we've got some finds on this mound here. Now this mound here corresponds to this one from Sol 603, which is another Gigapan I put up the other day. Now there's not much to see in this Gigapan, so I'm going to be really brief with this one, but basically there's a weird thing over here that looks a bit like part of a flying machine or something, and I've got some links to some interesting images with that. So yeah, it's a bit like one of these ancient alien artifacts that were found on Earth dating back thousands of years. This one's from Istanbul, this one here, and you can see like a little spaceman sat inside there with his head's broken off. This has been shown on Ancient Aliens, I'm sure, and it's obviously a guy in a little rocket or sort of flying machine, okay, and that's very similar to this. And when you look at this thing here, you've got that similar kind of detail there, as if there's someone sat in it just there with a cockpit. But it may not be. It may be it may just be some rocks that are broken in a funny way that look a bit like that. But I thought that was interesting. Anyway, and basically the main thing in this image is this up here. Now I found this years ago, and was one of the first really cool intact skulls that I found, animal skulls anyway. Now you can see it pretty clearly, and even in the raw image, if I zoom in, you can see teeth here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 or 6 there. Not very clear. This is completely raw. I haven't enhanced this. So what I've done here is done an enhancement for you. This is a new enhancement, and I thought I would redo some of my older finds just to see if I could get a bit more detail out of them, like this, which I have. Now this time I was a lot more careful with this image and was very careful not to make it look worse than it does already. And I basically selected round it and brightened it right up. And what I didn't notice before in my original video, which dates back about 5 or 6 years, what I didn't see were these other teeth. We've got a row of teeth at the front here. 1, 2, 3, 5 or 6 there. And we have 1, 2, 3, 4, about another 6 or 7 behind on the lower jaw here. Now, what sort of creature is this? Leave a comment below if you think you know. I think it could be some type of primitive horse, like a small pony type creature, or some kind of antelope or something like that. It may have had horns that are broken off. It seems to be broken off at the back here. So there may have been horns attached which have come off. Who knows? But to me it looks a bit like a goat and a bit like a horse and a bit like a few other things. It's got a very straight snout coming down here, like you would get on a horse or pony. And the lip and teeth detail look very horse-like to me, or goat-like even. It's going a bit closer. You can actually see the teeth there going back. So, answers on a postcard with that one. I don't really know what type of creature it is, but what I do know is it's a mammal, probably a mammal, and it's a vegetarian, because those teeth are designed for eating plant material by the looks of it, like you would see on a horse or something similar. Okay, so that says to me it's some kind of antelope or horse type, pony type thing, primitive horse. Now I have found other skulls and remains and even carvings of what look like horses on Mars in this area, so it could well be. The question is, how big is it? Now you can see the thing up here. It's quite a long way off. This is probably from the rover, from the viewpoint, which is down here. a good 50 feet away, I would say, probably 60. So this is quite large. How big is that? 12, 15 inches? So it could be a horse. Could be a horse, okay? So that was interesting. So this mound here we're looking at here is this mound here. Because you've got all this material over here to the left of it here, and if you look at this one, you've got all this material here over to the left of it, so it's the same. Okay, so this is just a close-up of the mound that I showed you before, which is the mound over to the left, opposite the mound where the Mars man walking is, here. You can just about make out one of the reptilian sort of skulls that I found here, but it's very, very small in this clip, just here. And the rover did get closer to this mound, this one here, and it sort of, I think, drove around this way and then went round this side of it, and basically we got a much closer view of this reptilian here. Now you would think that was just a rock, wouldn't you? Well, when you see the close-up of it, this is it here. It's actually a skull. And I did a video about this a while back called The Snake Brothers, Row of Statues Part 5, where there's a bunch of reptilian and strange heads and skulls all in a group in that little area there, including one here. And that's just below this one. So some crazy stuff. And look at the eye detail in this one here. Absolutely insane. Got a layer here, and another layer here, and another layer at the top here. I think the initial layer was down here, and there would have been burials down here, led down. And like some of the diagrams I've showed you before, the ones near the centre of the mound were the most important people, and then the mound is then piled up, and then more people are buried around the edge, and then they're layered on top of each other. In other words, you have a bunch of burials, then you cover them up, and then you have another bunch of burials, then you cover them up again, and you eventually end up with a mound full of skulls and bones and bodies, basically. But I don't think this animal skull here has anything to do with the burials. This is just a wild animal that died in this area. Body was probably eaten, and the skull was left behind because there's not much meat on the skull, as I've said before. So there we are. So I really do think that these are burial mounds, and they're done in different layers, and you have these ridges, and you have a bunch of things in front of one ridge, which would have been covered up, and then another ridge here. So they're done in sort of layers of burials, okay? And that's why we see so many different things, and I'm sure if you went on top of this mound, you'd find more stuff up here as well, where the top layer is eroded away, okay? So that was it, really. And please let me know if you've been unsubscribed recently. We've been having a few words with YouTube about them unsubscribing people, and they still haven't given me a straight answer. I've written to them about 5 times now, and they always try and fob me off saying, oh, they're just bots that we get rid of and stuff like this, or inactive accounts. So what they may be doing, if you have an account that's not very active, they may be trying to get rid of your accounts or just deleting them. So who knows what's going on there. So keep an eye out for that, and do let me know if you've been unsubscribed. I mean, and had to resubscribe by pressing the bell again. Please let me know in the comments, because I will get onto them again, okay? So thanks for watching, everybody. Check out the links from the Gigapans. There's loads of videos and images you can link to from these, especially this one here. There's loads of stuff to see in this one, and it's all linked up to the raw images and everything else that you can get, and lots of different videos and images and all sorts of other things, okay? So thanks for watching. I'll see you soon.